Paul Andrews, May 17, 1958, c. October 21, 2024, better known by his stage name Paul Di'Anno, was an English heavy metal singer who was the lead vocalist for Iron Maiden from 1978 to 1981. In his post-Maiden career, Di'Anno issued numerous albums over the years, as both a solo artist and as a member of such bands as Gogmagog, Di'Anno's Battlezone, Killers, Rockfellas, and more recently, Warhorse. Career: Iron Maiden, 1978 to 1981. Di'Anno with Steve Harris in 1980. Di'Anno was born on May 17, 1958, in Chingford, East London, where he also grew up. Because of his Brazilian father, Di'Anno held dual British and Brazilian citizenship. He spent his teenage years singing in various rock bands and working as a butcher in Station Road and as a chef in hotels and restaurants. According to Iron Maiden's The History of Iron Maiden, Part 1, The Early Days DVD, he was introduced to the band by drummer Doug Sampson, an old friend of Harris's from his days in the band Smiler. It was around this time that he first adopted the stage name Di'Anno, which he would later use to claim Italian descent. Their first audition with Rod Smallwood reputedly failed when Di'Anno was arrested for showing off his pocket knife in public. The band's 1980 self-titled release quickly became acknowledged as a classic of its genre, as the band merged punk's energy with metal's riffs and progressive rock complexity, serving as the blueprint for such future genres as thrash metal and speed metal and influencing later progressive metal bands. 1981 saw the release of their second album, Killers, as well as a stopgap live EP made in Japan. Iron Maiden decided that to progress, they would have to find a singer capable of being on tour. They found a replacement in former Samson frontman Bruce Dickinson. Di'Anno's last show with the band was on September 10, 1981 at the Oddfellows Mansion in Copenhagen, Denmark. In 1981, Di'Anno left Iron Maiden after a meeting with the band and their manager Rod Smallwood. In Di'Anno's words, "It's like having Mussolini and Adolf Hitler run your band. Because it is Rod Smallwood and Steve Harris, and that's it. There can't be anyone else, and my character is too strong for that, so me and Steve was always fighting." Di'Anno was paid out by Smallwood at the time of his departure and did receive royalties for songwriting credits. Di'Anno, 1983 to 1985. Di'Anno was the first project by Paul Di'Anno after he was fired from Iron Maiden. This group was originally called Lone Wolf, but after disagreement with a group already called Lone Wolf, they changed their name and ended up recording only one album under the simple moniker of Di'Anno. Musically, the band shifted away from the NWOBHM sound at the time like Iron Maiden to a more Americanized sound similar to bands like Journey and Foreigner. On the tour, Di'Anno played Remember Tomorrow from his catalog of Iron Maiden songs, along with their own songs and a few other covers, most notably The Kinks' You Really Got Me and Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Having limited success, the six-piece band disbanded shortly after they were done touring. The only other recordings available from this band are a single of Heart User, a Japanese single of Flaming Heart, and a Sweden-only VHS release called Live at the Palace, also available on DVD as Di'Anno Live from London. During the latter performance, the band played an unreleased song entitled Spiritual Guidance, which Paul told the audience would be on the band's forthcoming album. This album was never recorded. Last known lineup: Paul Di'Anno, lead vocals. Lee Slater, guitars, vocals. P. J. Ward, guitars, vocals. Kevin Brown, bass, vocals. Mark Venables, keyboards, vocals. Frank Noon, drums, replacing Dave Irving from the album lineup, who in turn replaced Mark Stewart. Gogmagog, 1985. In 1985, Di'Anno joined a project that was intended to be a supergroup. The group, called Gogmagog, see the biblical book Ezekiel 38 verses 1-2, was put together by DJ and record producer Jonathan King, best known for discovering the group Genesis in the late 1960s. King assembled a star-studded lineup featuring Di'Anno, drummer Clive Burr, guitarists Janik Jers and Pete Willis and bassist Neil Murray, but the members became increasingly frustrated by a policy that forbade them from writing any original material. Gogmagog released a 3-song EP on the independent Food for Thought label in 1985 entitled I Will Be There, with Russ Ballard writing the title song and producer King writing the other 2 songs. Although reviews were generally positive, the EP did not chart and the group disbanded after King began to lose interest in the project. Di'Anno has been completely dismissive of the short-lived project, referring to it as nothing and claiming he only got involved for the money. Battlezone, 1985 to 1989, 1998. After the breakup of his self-titled band, Di'Anno formed Strike with Direl, guitar, who recruited drummer Bob Falk, who had used the name Sid Falk while playing drums in Overkill, and the Hurley brothers John, second guitar, and Chaz, bass. The project was eventually named Battlezone, after a name straight from a comic book. Upon the vocalist's return to Britain in 1985.1986 saw the enrollment of former Lone Wolf and Tokyo Blade guitarist John Wiggins. The band's initial lineup comprised Di'Anno, guitarists John Wiggins and John Hurley, bassist Lawrence Kessler and Adam Parsons on drums. Di'Anno had previously known guitarists John Wiggins and John Hurley from bands such as Deep Machine and Iron Cross. Parsons had gone under the stage name 80 Dynamite while in Ant-Mate. However, Parsons left shortly after to replace Vince Hoare in the London-based glam band Belladonna, formed by former Hell's Bells vocalist Paul Quigley, with Paul Lewis, Jeff Fox and Neil Chris, and Falk reappeared on the scene in time together with Danish bassist Pete West, Peter Vester, to record the band's first album Fighting Back, written entirely by John Hurley, except the title track, which was credited to Bob Falk. Battlezone performed a club tour of America in 1987 to promote the debut Fighting Back, but musical differences, arguments and physical fights within the band led to the departure of John Hurley and Bob Falk after the first tour. According to Di'Anno's book The Beast, Hurley had become an egomaniac and the drummer Falk a liability, so they were thrown out the band. Their places were taken by ex-Persian Risk members Graham Bath and Steve Hopgood, respectively, following the tour's completion. The second album to be released was entitled Children of Madness, and it featured a track entitled Metal Tears, which is about a man who was unable to have a steady relationship and built a female robot, who he subsequently fell in love with. The original idea came from a book titled Clone. However, the track received criticism from the media for being very similar to a track, entitled London, on Queensryche's Rage for Order album. Guitarist Graham Bath, who had been recruited to play second guitar, wasn't enthusiastic about touring, so he was fired from the band. Pete West recommended a replacement, Alf Batts, who joined just in time to go to New York for the video shoot. The video for I Don't Wanna Know was played in rotation on MTV in the US. Drugs and infighting again put a strain on the band. Towards the end of the final tour, most members had quit, leaving Di'Anno to complete the tour with a backing band in order to fulfill his contract. Subsequently, American guitarist Randy Scott, along with Dave Harmon on guitar and Eddie Davidson on bass, signed up with Battlezone. However, the band were without proper management and disbanded shortly after. Battlezone played their last concert on December 10, 1989, at Dynamo Open Air in Eindhoven, Netherlands. Following the breakup of Battlezone, Di'Anno and Hopgood formed the power metal band Killers, releasing 4 albums. Hurley would later form glam rock band Hello Girls and release the 12-bore Honeymoon single in 1990 and Just Can't Say I Love You in 1993. During 1990, Di'Anno fronted Praying Mantis for a tour of Japan, which was recorded for the subsequent Live at Last album release, with ex-Iron Maiden guitarist Dennis Stratton. Wiggins joined a reformed Tokyo Blade in 1995. By 1998, Di'Anno had resurrected the name Battlezone. Joining him were Wiggins and fellow ex-Tokyo Blade members bassist Colin Riggs and drummer Mark Angel. Second guitars were supplied by the Brazilian Paulo Turin. This lineup cut the album Feel My Pain, released by the fledgling Zoom Club label. Working titles for the album included Spoonface and Smack, both containing references to heroin use. The album had a heavier edge compared to the first 2 Battlezone albums. The band undertook a sold-out Brazilian tour in January 1998, with erstwhile Killers colleagues bassist Gavin Cooper and guitarist Nick Bird joining on the South American tour. The band toured Brazil in the same year, playing a 3-week tour to sold-out audiences up to 6,000 fans a night. Being brought back down to earth, Battlezone upon their return home put on a gig at the Walthamstow Royal Standard with an audience of only 100 or so and a gig at JB's Dudley in the West Midlands attracting fewer than a dozen fans. A live track from the Walthamstow gig later appeared on a compilation of all 3 Battlezone albums, entitled Cessation of Hostilities. Ex-Battlezone bassist Gavin Cooper joined Lionheart in December 2004, then moved on to State Trooper in May 2005. The bassist subsequently joined the ranks of Magnum singer Bob Catley's solo band for UK dates in April 2006. In mid-2008, a Battlezone compilation entitled The Fight Goes On was released as on the Phantom Sound and Vision label as a 3-CD box set featuring all 3 Battlezone studio albums. Last known lineup: Paul Di'Anno, vocals; Johnny Bravo Wiggins, guitars, 1985-89, 1998-99. Paolo Turin, guitars, 1998-99. Colin Riggs, bass, 1998-99. Mark Angel, drums, 1998-99. Former/past members: Dearell, guitars, 1985. John Hurley, guitars, 1985-87. Graham Bath, guitars, 1987. Alf Batts, guitars, 1987-89. Randy Scott, guitars, 1989. Dave Harmon, guitars, 1989. Nick Burr, guitars, 1998. Chaz Hurley, bass, 1985-86. Peter Vester, bass, 1986-88, listed as Pete West on the back covers of Fighting Back and Children of Madness. Eddie Davidson, bass, 1989. Gavin Cooper, bass, 1998. Bob Sid Falk, drums, 1986-87. J. Michael D., drums. Steve Hopgood, drums, 1987-89. Praying Mantis, 1990. After being dropped by BMG, Praying Mantis disbanded. Then, in a Spinal Tap-ish twist of fate, Paul Di'Anno called Dennis Stratton in 1989 about the Japanese wanting to have a 10-year anniversary of the new wave of British heavy metal. The band found themselves enjoying a renaissance in Tokyo, Japan, prompting a reformation and tour in April 1990, which yielded the Live at Last LP. Killers, 1990-1997, 2001-2003. Killers, metal band, redirects here. Not to be confused with The Killers. Di'Anno, in 2003. Killers was formed back in the summer of 1991. Cliff Evans was living in New York with Arnie Goodman, the manager of Fastway. Steve Hopgood, who played in Battlezone with Di'Anno previously, called Evans and outlined his plans for a new band. Di'Anno and Hopgood flew over to New York from the UK, where they formed a band. Within a few days, Killers had hired John Gallagher, from Raven, to play bass on a short-term basis. Former member of Drive, She Said, and New York session player Ray Datone was brought in on second guitar. Shortly afterward, a live album called Assault on South America was recorded, featuring a number of Iron Maiden and Battlezone tracks and covers of We Will Rock You and Smoke on the Water. This was funded by Rock in Rio promoter Carlos Genesio and to be released primarily for the South American market. Recorded in Brazil, Argentina and Venezuela in summer of 1993, inches splashed on the back cover. However, according to John Gallagher, the South American tour fell through, so the entire album was recorded on a mobile recording truck in New York. Later, a Canada-based record company called Magnetic Air Productions issued a pirate, bootleg, release worldwide, under a different cover, with no royalties being paid to the band. Killers then played 2 days of showcases at Arnie Goodman's New York City studio for several major record companies, including Virgin, EMI, Sony, and BMG. Representatives flew into New York from all over the world to see Killers play. They played only Iron Maiden songs because the band had not written any material. Maiden songs played included Phantom of the Opera and Wrathchild, which evidently impressed a BMG representative enough to give the band a $250,000 contract. BMG were unaware that these songs had been recorded previously. Once Killers had the record deal, they started to write the first album entitled Murder One. Rob Fraboni was recruited to produce the record. The band moved to Binghamton, where they stayed in a motel in which the owner had a set-up rehearsal studio. The album was written in 2 weeks. Fraboni then took Killers to White Crow Audio, Burlington, Vermont, to record the drums, which took about half a day. Finally, vocals and final mixing were performed at the Power Station in New York. Nick Burr left Killers after the completion of Murder One and was replaced by former Battlezone and Persian Risk guitarist Graham Bath, who had also briefly played in Battlezone. For the next 18 months, the band toured around the world playing to fans all over Europe, Japan, and coast to coast across the USA. After the tour of Murder One, Killers returned to the UK while Di'Anno stayed in the US. Around this time, Di'Anno married an English girl, whom he flew into New York. Drugs and alcohol took their toll and the marriage quickly fell apart. Di'Anno left New York and moved in with his new American girlfriend in LA. A fight between him and her involving a knife caught the attention of the police, who came into the apartment and arrested him for spousal abuse, cocaine possession, and firearms offenses. After a court appearance, he was sentenced to spend 4 months in an LA jail, and Di'Anno was branded by the judge as a menace to society. It was here that Di'Anno began writing songs for the next Killers album and posting tapes back and forth to the UK, where the band were now living. Di'Anno returned to the UK after being deported. It was here that the band was already signed to Bleeding Hearts Records located in Newcastle, where they recorded their second studio album, entitled Menace to Society. The album had a more groove/thrash metal sound, and some critics compared this album to the works of Pantera and Machine Head. It was poorly received by many critics with the exception of Metal Hammer magazine in Germany, who voted it as the best new album for that year. By 2003, Di'Anno and Cliff Evans went on tour as the only original members of Killers remaining. Di'Anno hired new musicians whom he remembered from touring in Germany and Austria. Marcus Thurston joined the band as second guitarist, Darius K took over bass duties, and Pete Newdeck on drums. Steve Hopgood had to retire as he developed tinnitus in his ears. The guitarist Graham Bath damaged his hands from playing so much over the years and developed arthritis. According to Di'Anno, he wanted Clive Burr, ex-Iron Maiden, on drums, but he could not get to rehearsals in time. Later on, Burr was to become severely ill from multiple sclerosis and died in 2013. By 2004, Killers had disbanded. Cliff Evans, the former Killers guitarist and last original member of the band apart from Di'Anno, subsequently formed his own record company called Soundhouse Records and re-released the entire Killers back catalog with the addition of another live album entitled Killers Live at the Marquee in 2008. Murder One album was reissued with 2 acoustic bonus tracks, Wrathchild and Dreamkeeper. Following this, Paul Di'Anno made both Killers studio albums available for download free of charge through his own website. Following legal action, Evans was forced to cease selling any Killers material on his label. In December 2013, Paul Di'Anno and Cliff Evans announced that the band would regroup and release a new album entitled The Lazarus Syndrome. Producer Phil Kinman, who had worked on Tank's album War Nation, was announced to be involved with the new project. Last known lineup: Paul Di'Anno, vocals, Di'Anno, ex-Battlezone, ex-Gogmagog, UK, ex-Iron Maiden. Cliff Evans, guitars, Chicken Shack, Headfirst, Tank. Graham Bath, guitars, Persian Risk, Sphinx. Brad Wiseman, bass. Steve Hopgood, drums, ex-Battlezone, ex-Chinatown, ex-Jagged Edge, Persian Risk, Shy, Tank, Wild. Former/past members: John Gallagher, bass, 1991 to 1992, Raven. Ray Ditone, guitars, 1991 to 1992. Nick Burr, guitars, 1992, ex-Battlezone, ex-Idle Rich, ex-Tyrant, now Bad Back Band. Gavin Cooper, bass, 1992 to 1994, ex-Battlezone. Nomad/Di'Anno, 1999 to 2001, 2003 to 2008. Following the demise of the new Battlezone unit put together in 1998, Di'Anno teamed up with expat Brazilian guitarist Paulo Turin and lived in São Paulo during 2000. A new band was created initially under the banner of Nomad and featured an all-Brazilian lineup. It was economically and logistically preferable for Di'Anno to live in Brazil during this period, in order to tour South America and release a self-produced album pleasing to that particular market. The album was distributed by Paris Records. However, complete worldwide distribution was not achieved. The album was repackaged and released as The Living Dead. The package included a DVD video for the title track. This was recorded in the East London docks and directed by Swedish director Mats Lundberg from Doom Films, who went to London to work on the concept with Di'Anno's manager Leah Hart. All of the special effects were added in Sweden, and the storyline was based on the lyrics and message of the song. Few previously released live Iron Maiden tracks were also added to the CD. Running Free in Norway Tour, 2002. In February 2002, Di'Anno had a mini-tour in Norway and visited Kroa in Volda, Samfundet in Trondheim, Bedong in Oslo, Park Biografen in Skien, Folken in Stavanger and Kvarteret in Bergen. The band was all Norwegian. Rockfellas, 2008 to 2010. Late 2008, Di'Anno relocated to the southeast of Brazil and toured with a new band/project named Rockfellas with 3 Brazilian musicians: Jean Dolabella, drummer, ex-Diesel/Eudora/Sepultura, Marqueo, guitarist, of Charlie Brown Jr. and Caniço of Raimundos/ex-Rodox, playing rock and roll and metal classics. There, he was nicknamed Paulo Baiano. Paulo equals Paul in Portuguese, Baiano equals who was born in Bahia, being the Paulo Baiano nickname a pun/joke, for his name, Paul Di'Anno, is pronounced in a very similar way to the nickname above. Norwegian live band, 2008 to 2024. Early 2008, Di'Anno toured Norway and later Eastern Europe in 2009 with an all-Norwegian backing band consisting of musicians Henrik Rickhagen, drums, R. Gogstad, bass, John Vegard Ness, guitar, and Anders Boas, guitar. Anders Boas was later replaced by guitarist Rickard Nilsson. The band went on to do several tours of Sweden and made festival appearances at Hard Rock Hell, Wales, UK 2013, Buxbaden, Faroe Islands, Denmark 2013, Tons of Rock, Halden, Norway 2014, Sweden Rock Festival, Norge, Sweden 2014, and Rock Against Narcotics, Pune, India 2015, before doing a tour of Sweden in the summer of 2015. The band has also toured with Blaze Bayley and Tim Ripper Owens. 2010s. Di'Anno was, before being jailed in March 2011, recording a new solo album with Paolo Turin, the guitarist who worked on Feel My Pain and Nomad. The album was being produced by Dieter Roth in his studio in Germany. However, work on the album ceased due to record company problems. He maintained an extensive world tour schedule, including 2 recent trips through America where traditional metal band Icarus, which served as both his opening and backing band. In June 2012, Di'Anno was given the freedom of the city of Bariloche in Argentina for charitable work carried out several years ago. In 2014, Di'Anno sang on lead vocals on the bonus track Fuck You All on the album Big Trouble by hard rock band Hollywood Monsters. The album was released in 2014 on Mausoleum Records and featured Steffhond on vocals and guitars, Vinny Appice on drums, Tim Bogert on bass, and Don Airey on keyboards. In August 2014, Di'Anno scrapped his retirement plans and released a new album with his new band, Architects of Chaos, called The League of Shadows. In 2015, he returned to Brazil on his tour The Beast Is Back, saying that this would be his last in the country. In this tour, the singer was accompanied by musicians from Rio de Janeiro, Vinny Tex, guitar, Tiago Velasquez, bass, and drummer Braulio Drummond. They currently part of the North American Leather Leones band. Di'Anno made 8 presentations around the country. These members would be part of the new band, however due to health problems, the singer had to pause activities and the project in standby. The same year, Di'Anno was interviewed extensively for the book Iron Maiden, 8081, by author Greg Prato. In May 2016, Di'Anno was hospitalized for undisclosed medical issues and was forced to cancel his previously announced June 2016 tour of Brazil. According to the tour's promoter, Blog and Roproducos, Di'Anno is undergoing a series of tests to help ensure an accurate diagnosis and identify an appropriate course of treatment. On October 29, 2017, Di'Anno joined the Iron Maidens on stage for their encore at the O2 Academy in Islington, London, performing Wrathchild and Iron Maiden. Di'Anno appeared in a wheelchair. 2020s. Di'Anno in 2023, in a wheelchair, performing his first UK show in 10 years at KK Steel Mill in Wolverhampton, England. Di'Anno was due to make his final performance on August 30, 2020 at the Beermageddon Festival in Bromsgrove, England, before he retired from touring, though he did not clarify on whether he intended to continue to record music. This appearance was cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with the festival dates rescheduled for August 2021. However, on June 7, 2021, Paul and the Ides of March band were removed from the line-up with the following statement: "We here at Gogmagog are gutted to announce Ides of March will no longer be appearing at this year's festival. We had been struggling to contact the band or management and just over a week ago had the news that the planned project will not be going ahead, and as such, the band will not appear at Gogmagog in 2021. We were so looking forward to Paul Di'Anno and a lineup of past Iron Maiden members gracing the Gogmagog stage. It would have been one of the most memorable festival appearances we have ever had, but sadly it isn't to be. I know many of you had huge anticipation for Di'Anno's farewell show, and we feel your pain, but we do promise Gogmagog will still be the fantastic festival it always is." On May 21, 2022, Di'Anno performed his first live show in 7 years with the Norwegian live band at Biker's Beer Factory in Zagreb, Croatia. In August 2023, it was announced that Di'Anno would release a new album for Brave Words Records in 2024 under the name Paul Di'Anno's Warhorse. In September 2024, Di'Anno released his first career retrospective, a CD plus DVD set consisting of his best post-Iron Maiden recordings and some previously unreleased material. A no-holds-barred documentary film on Paul Di'Anno has been in the making for 4 years and will be ready for festival screenings late in 2024. Singing style. In comparison to the operatic vocals of Bruce Dickinson, his successor in Iron Maiden, Di'Anno is remembered for having a more guttural punk sound to his singing, in part because he began his singing career in punk band The Pedophiles. He usually sang with a raspy and rougher sound, although he was capable of singing with a purer voice as demonstrated by slower numbers like Remember Tomorrow, Strange World and Prodigal Son. Later in his career, Di'Anno's style, along with his music, became darker and more aggressive as Iron Maiden evolved into a more progressive outfit. Personal life. Di'Anno married 5 times throughout his life and had 6 children. Di'Anno's religious affiliation was made uncertain by his own words. He gave interviews that contradicted each other on the subject, perhaps as a practical joke. He had a tattoo on the back of his head that said 666 and God equals sucker. According to his autobiography, he converted to Islam in the 1990s after reading the Quran. However, he later reversed that position, saying, "I think religion kills everybody. I don't believe in it. No, my father was a Muslim, I must admit. But I don't give a fuck." In later interviews, Di'Anno clarified that he never was a true Muslim, that he never stopped drinking, but tried to become a better person by applying some of the Muslim philosophies to his life. His autobiography furthers the confusion. In various passages he claimed to be Muslim, Catholic, Jewish, and Aboriginal. In February 2011, Di'Anno was convicted on 8 counts of benefit fraud for claiming more than £45,000 under false pretenses. On March 11, 2011, he was jailed for 9 months at Salisbury Crown Court. He only served 2 of the 9 months to which he was sentenced, being released early for good behavior. Autobiography. Di'Anno released an autobiography titled The Beast, ISBN 1-904034-03-9. The book includes a chapter of stories and comments regarding Di'Anno written by former bandmates including Dennis Stratton, John Wiggins, and Steve Hopgood. The book was controversial for its portrayal of his abuse of various drugs, many accounts of Di'Anno's violence towards people, and the explanation of his ban from America. Other interests. Di'Anno had several businesses outside of the music industry, including an internet cafe and a hotel/restaurant in England, both of which he sold. He was last resident in Salisbury, Wiltshire. Health and death. A crowdfunder was launched in January 2021 to help raise money for the singer's knee surgery, following several years of poor health. In September 2021, it was reported that Di'Anno was still waiting for the surgery, and a photo surfaced of the singer showing his badly swollen leg. In October 2021, the crowdfunding had reached its target, to which Di'Anno heartily thanked everyone for their support. In November 2021, Di'Anno relocated to Croatia to undergo treatment and surgery for his knee. Following the successful surgery, Di'Anno confirmed reports that Iron Maiden helped pay for the final part of his treatment in Croatia. On October 21, 2024, the label Conquest Music confirmed that Di'Anno had died at his Salisbury home at the age of 66, after being troubled by severe health issues in recent years that restricted him to performing in a wheelchair.